Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brand. Finally back on home turf this week. How you doing, man?
I am doing well. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thank you. I had a very nice weekend. What about you? Did you do anything nice this weekend with no football?
Yeah, I mean, got out a little bit. We're going to they have this new fall break. I don't know how many states it's in the US now, but this new fall break. So this whole week's off from school, so we're going to be doing a little bit of a family trip. So calm weekend, but I'll be heading out later today for that.
Hopefully, it doesn't find its way here. If there's schools closed for fall break, I'm finding one that's open and sending my kids to it. Must be a school up with someone.
Exactly.
So getting sent to school, I'm telling you. I don't care what it is. Um, Very, very nice. We, of course, had no Manchester United this weekend, and as brutal as United are to watch and have been, although I have to say, we finished the international break on a positive. I still miss them badly whenever they don't play.
Mm,
It's still a
yeah.
really weird, strange weekend. But nonetheless, we were hoping for a quiet international break, James, which that did not last long. And Jim, of course, Ratcliffe done an interview, and there was discussions about possibly a UAE takeover. Turkey Al Sheikh, of course, put this tweet out. Um, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Ratcliffe's comments. Shea Lacey also training with the England team, which was a big deal, of course.
Yes.
Some other rumors this morning with Adam Morton and Baleba and a few others. So let's get through today, mate. But give me your summary on Jim Ratcliffe's comments.
I think that obviously on Ruben Amram, which is the big one that a lot of people listened to and kind of took where he's talking about, 3 years and things like that. I think the big takeaway from that really, or maybe the intention of it, as far as I could gather it, because when you actually listened or if you watch the video of him actually talking, it's not like he came out and said, "Ah, Ruben Amram, he's here for 3 years. That's it. That's how it's going." It was
Mm,
more like, yeah, it's not going to turn around overnight. And then the guy kept kind of pressing him on certain questions until he sort of said that, but which is fine. And I think that really my takeaway from it on that side of it was, before Sunderland, you had stories sacked if you lose, not sacked, all sorts of stuff going around and around. And it's a type of environment that's entirely unhealthy.
mm-hmm,
And regardless of some of the things that Jim Ratcliffe has done, we've wanted an owner to come forward and speak and be present to talk about these kinds of things, to take a little bit of the pressure off. And I
mm-hmm,
think he did well in the comments to do that, to take a bit of this pressure off. Nobody can write a story tomorrow saying Jim Ratcliffe, saying that Amram's on the verge of being sacked now, right? Nobody can write that story. Nobody can put that out there now, because everyone's just going to go, well, no, the owner just said he's probably going to get the full season. Maybe he wants to see him after 3 years, regardless of how, long that feeling lasts, that is the present feeling. And that was the biggest takeaway. I mean, a lot of the other stuff we've heard before, talk about youth investment, things like that too, and getting more academy players into the first team. But that was the main takeaway from it. I think just taking the pressure off, that environment, trying to peel it away a little bit and put it elsewhere, which was for me quite okay.
I don't really understand what other answer he could have given.
Yes.
First of all, you give that answer up until the day you sack him. Well, of
Yes.
course he wants
True.
to give him 3 years. If
Yeah.
he answers, well, do you know what? I did want to give him 3 years, but now I want to give him 3 weeks. We'd all be looking at this like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I would hope he would answer the question that way. I mean, what is it that people want him to say? So he should be. That doesn't mean that he'll get 3 years, of
Of
course.
course.
And anyone with a functioning brain understands that no owner can extrapolate things that far out and say, yeah, we'll definitely get 3 years. If the guy that hired him isn't saying that, yes, he wants to give him 3 years, then you might as well just sack him now. Because those doubts were, I mean, I don't know. I didn't understand the criticism that Ratcliffe took for saying that. I would expect him to say that. I did say something that to me was a bit clumsy because I think it deserves clarification. Or maybe I'm giving him too much credit. But when he said he wanted Manchester United to be the most profitable football club in the world, that's fine as long as your intention to do that is through monetization of success on the pitch. But if
Yeah.
you're if the this is where the culture attitude, the culture aspect is a big problem, James, because when your first principle is profit, everything's a casualty to it. I've said this many times, and this is the wrong goal. It's okay if the profitability is an emergent property of the sport success, but it
Yeah.
can't be the goal.
Yeah, and I think it's a little hard to kind of marry the things up to a degree with what he's saying, because obviously, what he was saying with the profitability and being having the most money available is that it's sort of like you can get a little bit of a chicken or the egg proposition here, right? Because what he was saying is that the clubs that can spend the most on football, on players, are ultimately the most successful. The more money you have for players, the more money you have for football. Usually those are the clubs that are successful. I mean, objectively, of course, that is the case. Paris Saint-Germain went out and I think spent the most money of the last couple of seasons to
Yeah, you
finally
can
get
fail
there.
with money, but you can't succeed without it.
Correct, exactly. And so it's like there's a chicken or the egg thing here of like you need the most money to be the most successful, but you also need to build up success will make you more money as well that can be reinvested in. So it goes kind of both ways. I can look at it as like his job as I guess the owner, he might see it as, is to say, all right, I need to get the club into a state of financial stability where it can perform on the pitch, where it can invest properly on the pitch to give us success. But obviously, there's also a line that has to be drawn there too, where you can say you can't just look at it in terms of dollars and cents, and then you end up actually cutting away and taking away some of the things that will be necessary to get success and
Mhm.
propel you up further. So there's a balance there. I think it's understandable. You need more money to spend to be successful, but at the same time, how you get there can hinder you too if you take the wrong steps.
You need more money, James. It all depends on what you do with the money that you make,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if you need more money for dividends, then you don't need more money. What's
Yes.
the purpose of the profitability, right?
Yeah.
Is the purpose of the profitability to reinvest completely in the football club? One of the things that I think Ratcliffe could do better with is because when he's criticizing certain aspects of Manchester United that need to be fixed, then praising the Glazers, how does he think
Mhm.
United got in the situation they're in?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I think about when he talks about it. Like, if he's gonna stand there and say, like, you know, we need more profit, not for dividends, not for profit, but to reinvest and things like that and make it all clear. He's sort of obviously in a side-handed way talking about the Glazers. And if he's talking about the debt, then he talks about the Glazers. And it's a little bit of a challenge here. I get not wanting to and probably not being able to say anything about them quite directly in that regard. And I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is there, but I know that it certainly kind of winds everyone up a bit,
I mean,
to like not see, like, to not talk about the elephant in the room. You know what I'm
uh,
saying?
yeah, like to me, it's just such an obvious don't say anything because
Yeah.
clearly is some type of understanding where they can't come out and criticize each other. And I don't think that even if those criticisms exist, which I'm sure they do privately, it's probably the best thing in the world for the club to be voicing those publicly and
Yeah.
for it to look like there's a conflict between the two owners of the football club. Those should be raised in private. And somewhat of a football manager's answer about his player, in
Yeah.
public, that bears no resemblance to reality.
Right.
Billionaires have massive egos. They aren't known for being most collegiate with each other. So I'm sure
Yeah.
there's diversity viewpoint between them. Um, he also talked about the academy, which
Hmm.
drew attention, saying that United's academy had not been properly attended to, and it had parsimonious investment and what have you. But then again, I'm questioning what's the goal of making the academy successful? Is it to continue to make sure that a very important artery of United's culture remains intact, or is it for the purpose of generating revenue by selling players, or is it both?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's one where maybe the answers didn't get justice in the way that they were published, because I read through the article itself and it was a lot different than what I originally saw on it. And the first answer, and again, it's kind of like, I think just because he's a wealthy businessman and that's his life, he looks kind of everything through a financial lens, and it's just the way that he communicates, which kind of makes sense. And it can be a little jarring sometimes, because like I saw originally comments like, the academy can save you financially and things like that, and you look and go, hang on a second, like,
Well, in his defense, James, he didn't create the rules that encourage that, right? I mean, that's not his fault. That's a fact, unfortunately.
Correct. But he was also saying it in two senses, because what he actually was saying was specifically said, it can save you because you get more players into the first team, more Kobe Mainus, more Marcus Rashfords, more players like that he said, and that the United has a history, of course, a long-standing history of bringing players through from the academy into the first team. Well, you don't have to buy those players either. So it's not even about selling them for profit, but these are players you don't have to buy. You don't have to go out and spend 80 million on. So, I think he looks at it from a financial lens, regardless of like selling players for profit. It makes a hell of a lot of sense to get more academy talents into the first team. It's good for you. It's good financially. It's good for everything. And I would say, it's interesting because I've seen a lot of debate over this point, and I debated it as well with people in my community about whether the academy has been somewhat unsuccessful, because
I know
you get a lot, you get a lot of people talking like recently, like it's been very good. And I can see the aspect of like the under 21s, the under 18s are doing well, but there's nobody making it to the first team. And it's been really slow for a long time. And so there's something, if ultimately the goal is win trophies at the under 18s level, well, then it's doing great. But I don't think that's really the ultimate goal of an academy, from a football standpoint. I think people are talking about losing this record, but it's because there's nobody made it in through the pipeline up to being ready, that it's down to like such a small number that it could be lost, and so I think it has faded a bit. I mean, in terms of the number of players coming through over the years.
Well, I think that there's one of the appointments that I think United made over the summer that I think is really, really important is the Johnny Evans hire of the pathway of loans, right? Because the pathway to the first team, I mean, the jumps are massive. You ask any professional footballer, what's the jump like between reserve team football and Premier League football, and they'll tell you like it's almost unscalable. It's so big.
Yeah.
It doesn't look that big when some players make that jump, but there's so many that don't. So I think that at clubs like United, when Alan Hansen said you'll never win anything with kids, he may be right today. I mean, we talked about this the last time when we were on this podcast, James, about Nicky Butt saying if the class of 92 came through, they might not get into the first team. There's just so many more variables now with young kids. Social media being one of them, what have you. That progression is very difficult to track. How many are Liverpool getting in? How many are, big City will go out and spend 180 million in January, and they're selling off players like Cole Palmer and accepting that they're going to go somewhere else and be exceptional players. This happens a lot, so we've seen this quite a bit. So it's hard to get those players in the first team. It's also hard when you're struggling. It's the worst time to bring young players in. City get more for their academy players because of how well they're performing on the pitch. That gives their academy players inflated value because there's a very clear reason why they're not getting in the first team. So, so in that sense, all of that has hurt United and the appraisal value of the young players. But at the same time, James, I think it was a stat under Ten Hag that said of all the managers in the top six, he'd given more debuts to academy players than all the rest of them combined. So, and Alejandro Garnacho, I think he's the first player United have got that type of fee for from the academy. So I think in that sense, we've seen recent improvement, but overall it's not been good enough, despite last season.
For sure. And I guess I would look at that and say, even though there were all those debuts, like none of them made it. Like I remember one of the games where it was like Iqbal Gore, like a bunch of players made on the pitch, but none of them are here. You know what I mean? Still, and that's kind of part of it. Is like, obviously they don't all have to. I'm not saying they're bad
Yeah.
players. Like most of them are good enough footballers to play somewhere, and a lot of them do, and a lot of them have moved on. But it's not like many stuck. You know what I mean? Have stuck for like the long haul. And besides Cobby's, I think the only one since Garnacho had kind of joined at 15 or something like that. I think Cobby's the only one that's made it in the first team that's stuck since, kind of unfortunately, I think it was Mason Greenwood quite
You
some
know,
time ago, and it's a bit of a long stretch.
I think one of the things that's hard to is human development is not an exact science, right?
Yeah,
And the way United, Liverpool, Premier League clubs are limited to how they recruit. Like you can go to Barcelona, can go and get a Pedri or Gavi, who are 8 hours away or 5 hours away.
yeah,
United
yeah,
can't do that. So
yeah.
how United recruit and the limitation how they recruit is completely different. And then the cognitive mental development of young players is just such a lottery that
Yep,
they need a bit of luck with injuries.
yep,
It all depends on their private milieu. Who are they socializing with outside? The how you get protected by the club when you go from a young player into the first team, because there's the focus and the pressure is massive. You want to try to protect players from that as much as possible, but it's just so hard at clubs like United to do that. You can do that at a Brighton, but doing it at United is totally different. I mean, I remember speaking to Franz Hope James about we're talking about Dean Henderson. Now, Franz
yep,
Hope was this is when Dean Henderson was out on loan. I think it was Sheffield United the first time.
yeah,
And there's a lot of people clamoring for him to be included. And we're talking about De Gea. De Gea was going through a dodgy patch. Them saying to me, you wait till he comes back and plays for United, because
yeah,
the mental pressure playing for Sheffield United, he can make 5 mistakes and you won't see them make one at United. It'll be on Sky Sports for a week. So
yep.
these factors are totally different at United.
Yeah, for sure. And as well, it's also first team. Like I can think of, like you said, I think one of the biggest things that is a huge improvement is Johnny Evans getting in that position, because there's
Yeah,
so many times we've looked at all these kids and said, well, they're not ready for United. They get on the pitch for a few minutes and you're like, no, but they should be playing. And we don't want to necessarily give up on them just because they're not ready for
right.
United right away, because it can take so much time and you need those loans. And look at Ahmad, had a great loan to Sunderland. He had 2 loans. It took 2 loans to get where he needed to be,
Mhm.
right? Ended up with a great loan to Sunderland, came back, and you can see what he can provide now. A really good loan at the right age can be the thing that allows that translation from
Alvaro
that level
Fernandez,
to the
for
next.
example.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's I think that was a huge thing getting Johnny Evans in there. But I do hope that this is something that does improve, and that, because there's a really good group of kids in the under 21, under 18 range kind of coming through right now. Like you say, Shea Lacey, Jack Fletcher, and quite a few others that do have the potential to actually be serious. And then, ones that are getting a lot of attention like JJ Gabriel, you got to have a good way, that pathway into that first team. It's got to be good, and it's got to be right, and it's got to be really, set up to properly bring them through, so we can get as many successes as possible, and create something sustainable there for the future for people to get through. But I really hope it's improved, because there's good kids and good talents that we don't want to see go to waste as well.
Another thing that obviously made the headlines, during that time was this tweet from Turkey Al Sheikh. Those of you who watch boxing, what have you, will know, same MMA, that he's huge in that particular arena, has direct connection to the Saudi royal family and the Saudi PIF fund. And so isn't exactly someone that's doing this for attention, or would be doing it because, if some, unforeseen reason. There had to have been some
Mm-hmm.
solid intelligence there. It ended up being something that was linked back to the UAE. What's your comments on that, James?
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, you know, football spaces and takeovers, we've seen so many things when we went through the whole process early on that, people who should potentially know something, maybe would know something, might know something, comes out there. But you're talking about such a huge, the purchase of Manchester United, first of all, a lot of the complications that come with it is, number one, that it's on the stock exchange. It's publicly listed. There's a lot of things that have to happen above board and all that. The second thing is that you have multiple owners in there at the moment now. This partnership between the Glazers and Sir Jim, which I think actually cuts a little bit through the potential for there to be some sort of like a block of knowing what's going on, or some sort of process here, because you have two major partners that will be informed on absolutely everything that's going on at any point in time. But it's an interesting one. And, my initial suspicion was like, it's an interesting person to say that, who's obviously well connected with so many people. And then it turns out maybe it's something with UAE, and maybe it's something with former United players, which could obviously explain how the rumors kind of spread through different places and different channels and things like that as well. It is interesting. I mean, I get the idea. Maybe somebody wants to kind of get their name out there a little bit. Maybe somebody's thinking about it. It's
But
more like,
who specifically did it get linked back to that they would benefit that?
I don't know. It's strange. And that's the thing, when there's no names attached and there's nothing really solidly attached, it's hard to believe there's much in it. My personal view is there's been a lot of the Glazers and Sir Jim and Ineos over the last couple of years hunting around for the stadium project, because there's a whole lot of money to be made potentially for somebody connected to this project too. There's real estate, there's commercial development, there's all sorts of things, that will go on with that in the stadium. And it's much more likely to me, I don't know, it's much more likely to me, from what I can tell, that, this people going out and talking to people and getting names out there, that, maybe there's groups that are looking at getting involved, maybe investing in this, maybe looking at commercial real estate, maybe, taking part in the stadium. Maybe there is even ownership shares on offer or something for somebody who wants to partner, to fund the stadium, because it's still an unanswered question of how is it being paid for, and how's all this whole redevelopment project being paid for. I suspect there's maybe truth in that area, and it can get like blended in a game of telephone a little bit, because these things are not totally solid even in these circles. Maybe somebody coming in as an investor, you know what I mean, like to be a part of this project rather than coming in and buying something overall.
Here's the thing: a club like United's always going to be technically on the market, right? Because every business is for sale, every single business. Okay, it's always a price. Okay, and the Glazers are business people. If they were made the right offer, would they sell? Yes. That being said, to me, as much as I want rid of the Glazers, in terms of a football operational perspective, I still don't think it makes sense to have two majority owners, right? That, what splits them is minor percentage. I think United needs streamlined management at the very top. And as we've said before, you just don't get consensus with billionaires in a room. I mean, you might have a shared goal and where you want to go, but they're going to have very different ideas on how you should get there. And they're not known for compromise. I think United need one specific owner to run the football club. And I don't think it's healthy I didn't agree with the ownership model that United are currently under, because I thought it would run into problems. But what's the feasibility and the plausibility of it, James? Because there was a lot of rumors also talking about the fact that the Glazers had the right to sell United behind Ratcliffe's behind his back.
Well, some people specifically said behind his back, but they can't.
Yeah, but I don't, obviously. Yeah. So what's the plausibility of it, though?
Well, I think there's a couple of things on this. Number one is, yes, there's these drag-along rights where somebody wants to come in and buy a full sale. Now, it has to be noted that the definition here is important. Somebody has to come in and buy every share. And as we know from the original process, due to this way that the club is dual structured, that means they have to make an offer to the market as well, the Class A market, the public market, and they have to buy 100% of shares. They have to make an offer for the entirety of the club. That may even include debt. We don't know the full details of what that would constitute, but they have to buy the whole club. And if the Glazers were then to agree to that deal, which would have to be at a minimum of $33 per share, then Jim Ratcliffe would be forced to sell. However, there's another existing clause in there, which is called the right of first offer, which is not expired and is indefinite in its agreement as a part of this purchase and governance agreement. So it would have to be adjusted by a new voting of governance agreements and things like that by the board and all of that. And its right of first offer means that should the Glazers want to solicit offers, should they even consider selling, they have to offer it to Ineos first. And they have to say, hey, do you want to buy it? And then they have 15 days to decide whether they want to buy it or not. And if they don't want to buy it, they file it or they don't answer. If they do want to buy it, they can make an offer. The Glazers don't have to accept that, mind you, but they do have to let him know and file these forms and things. So it's really, really, really unrealistic for them to sell it behind his back, per se, for something like that to happen. Because let's take, for example, the matter of if word got out that they were quietly soliciting offers at all, they'd immediately be in violation of a pretty strong agreement, a pretty heavy governing agreement when it comes to these types of things. And the one thing I will say about the Glazers, it's not, I'm not saying this is a positive, but it's just a reality, is that they've been pretty sticky on the rules when it comes to United and the stock exchange. They have so much, most of obviously their wealth, their money, their investments are in the United States. They don't really want to fall afoul of SEC rules and things like that. It's not like they don't own a ton of other shit in the US. When the original takeover process happened, this is one of the holdups, is that even the threat of a lawsuit from Class A owners who owned some of the shares ended up blocking this deal for months. Well, violating their board agreement with a guy who's much wealthier than them in Jim Ratcliffe is probably not something they want to do. So I'd be really surprised if they at any point attempted to sell it behind his back or anything like that either.
A question that comes up about them, that hasn't come up about them, James, but has come up about Ratcliffe, but should come up, is what about their age? Because there has to be a point in their life where they don't want to die owning Manchester United. Like, I mean, I don't believe that it has that much amount of value to them. I think at some point it has a cash value to them that they want to realize. I just, forgive me for saying this, but I just don't think they're that benevolent to want to hand this over to their family members, right? I mean, remember Malcolm gave it to them. And if you look at what Malcolm did in court with his family over his parents, will settlement. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think at some point there has to be a calculation that says, look, maybe, we have to start thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so too. And my suspicion from, it's been quiet. Like we haven't talked about this subject in this way for quite a long time. But like originally, my understanding and I guess the strongest hints that we had would be, I think it's a part of the stadium process, because if you look at it right now, it's probably I don't think they're going to get, I don't think, let's look on the other side of it. I don't think anyone's going to come in and pay the type of money Jim Ratcliffe did the valuation of the club at. The Qatari bid didn't value it at that money. It was actually lower. This dual class problem means you have to buy up all those useless, I'm sorry to say it, but useless Class A shares that are on the market because they have no voting power, but you have to buy them anyway. And that was there's so many negatives to selling the club, to buying the club right now. I don't think anyone's giving the value, but the stadium project and the regeneration will make the club worth significantly more money when it's done. We know how that really works. And we've seen that can improve things. I mean, a bigger stadium, 100,000 seats, all of this, everything that goes on with it, the revenues go up, everything goes up. To me, the indications that we had were probably around the stadium. Like if there was a way for them to cash out and see some of the value return from the stadium, or maybe after the project, or maybe as part of the project, they start to sell at higher amounts once it gets going. I think that's where it's headed. I think they will sell, but I think they're looking at the upside of higher money values over the next 5 to 7 years as the stadium gets underway and that kind of project gets underway. Because you also have things like the Champions League. The Champions League is worth more money now. It's got more games. If United are back in it, when they're back in it, the club will go up. So I think that they probably look at it and say, we're probably going to make more money if we sell in 2 to 3 years from now, not today.
If I'm UEFA, okay, and my warning lights aren't blinking red when I read things like Manchester United considering playing a friendly tour in Saudi Arabia because they're not in the Champions League. AC Milan aren't in the Champions League. It's just a matter of time before the Saudis pay a ton of money for big clubs or have an empty week to play in their tournaments. And this is exactly why you wait for expanding these tournaments to make it almost impossible not to qualify. So you don't have an empty week. So you don't go fill it lucratively somewhere else. So it doesn't open a big, massive opportunity for clubs that are like, let's say qualify for that Champions League. We could make 50 million going to Riyadh for a tournament, and when we don't have any games, and instead of playing Champions League, we're playing because UEFA had to concede they didn't have the legal apparatus to stop La Liga game in Miami. Now they're trying to do it retroactively, but they've no chance. Precedent's been set, and this is just going to burst. If you're not looking at that at UEFA and saying, whatever we do, we have to find a competition that, and I know for other fans, this is going to be infuriating. I accept this, that clubs like Manchester United are not missing out because we can't have clubs under that type of selection pressure because they'll pursue revenue.
Yes.
And I wouldn't blame United for doing that, by the way.
Of course.
If someone turned around United and offered them 30 million to play in a tournament in midweek when they have no Champions League, whatever, they'd be idiots not to take it.
Yeah. Yep.
So UEFA should be heeding that warning to me. But the other thing that Amorim or Ratcliffe said, and we'll move on from this, is that the Glazers would never tell him to sack Ruben Amorim.
Right.
Which I do believe that would be true. Which shows that they really do stay out of football matters. And the last part I want to mention on this, James, is the seat license issue on the stadium. Now, this is something as an American we're quite familiar with because this is something very common out here. Do you want to clarify a few things on that, James? What you know about it from the American perspective? Because you can do that here in stadiums.
Yeah. So you basically you pay for your right to buy the seat, essentially, for your right to buy the season ticket in some of them. So obviously it's like you're paying almost like it could almost be considered like an expensive membership fee for season ticket holders to say, based on where your seat is, you have to pay this extra membership fee every year that allows you to buy the right, that you get the right to keep that season ticket, to keep that seat, to keep that spot. And then you pay for your season ticket in addition.
We have a situation here where you essentially lease the seat.
Yeah.
So like at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. So that means if they have concerts there, right?
Yes.
You own that seat.
Yeah. So there's other things. Yeah.
Yeah. So if they're having a concert, you can also lease that seat to someone at a concert or other events, which is you're leasing that seat from the stadium. So
other positives of it essentially is that there's ways you can, if they apply other events there and other things there, and it becomes like an entertainment hub. That's one of the reasons it's looked at beyond football, where it can be advantageous for you to do it. But
most people just want to pay for this price of a football seat, James, and that's where there has to be an acquisition cost where that is affordable for people.
Yep.
I mean, we've seen, I don't know if you've seen them, but we've seen some of the World Cup prices here released, and as expected, they're just exorbitant.
They're insane. I mean,
well, I was watching a clip yesterday, James, of Sampdoria, where, Sampdoria down in Serie B, big football club, and they're running these events to bring back the atmosphere and all their fans. And football clubs are football clubs when they don't make money. Their business is when they make money. But when they don't make money, they're football clubs and they want their fans back. But when they start making money, because they always privatize the gains and publicize the losses.
Yeah.
So this is what you get left with, though, once you swap it out. If football clubs want to be treated as businesses, then why would people pay for a product that's in a division below? You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
you want to go to the market with a product that gets consumers, then you bring the best product to the market. You can't be a football club when you're losing and a business when you're winning. But
Yep.
that's what you're going to get eventually is you're going to get people that show up for an event. When I go to watch the opera, it's not because I'm a massive, not that I've ever been, but if I did, it wouldn't be because I'm an opera fanatic. It'd be a one-off event. That's what you're going to
Yeah.
get.
Yep.
Right? So you lose that fandom. I think for Manchester United, especially football clubs over there that organically grew from the ground up, they can't, they can't price gouge to me.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it's done as a survey as of now. I would expect the results to that survey being pretty negative to come back. So, no decisions obviously been made on it yet. It's something they're looking at, and I think obviously there's a point to this, which is that let's say just in understanding something too, if United are going to go to potential investors, banks or groups or otherwise, to part of the stadium project, what they have to present to them is what are the future revenues going to look like. In order to do that, they kind of have to know what is the pricing model that they're going to be doing for the stadium, how are tickets going to be sold, where's the revenue coming from, what is its expectation based on games per season, because they're going to look at that and say, well, look, the stadium's going to be worth X amount. This is a good investment. The revenues are going to go up by X amount. This is why it's worth investing in. So that's the reason they're going to be doing a lot of this stuff, is that they need to make that decision probably as a part of any sort of presentation for funding to investors and all that. But hopefully there is a balance here that's right. I mean, I hopefully it's in alignment. I mean, obviously United, a bigger stadium, if it's a better project and all that, we know prices are going to inevitably be going up one way or another. But I think there's definitely ways to do it where there's still a lot of availability for people who, don't have enormous, resources to do it. Cannot become a game only for the rich. And I give the example as well of, being from, like in the NFL, the prices are often so high for a lot of stuff that the atmosphere is completely lost.
Yeah.
And then people will watch, sometimes in Europe, people will watch like college football and the atmosphere is totally different. It's great. It's like a European, football atmosphere when you watch college football. And of course, the reason is you've got a bunch of young people showing up. It's affordable. It's cheap. It's free for a lot of them. So they come in and it's, and you get people who are passionate and it's not just a tourist. I mean, the Super Bowl is the worst atmosphere in football. And I think the Champions League final is often fairly similar in that respect because it becomes a game for the wealthy to go, and it's a spectacle rather than for the fans themselves. And that's what you got to make sure we don't lose in this as well. 100%.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that's one of the sad aspects of the raw pursuit of profit is that, anything that has, everything that can be commoditized and sold does so, and anything that has sentimental value is a casualty to that. I was reading earlier that United linked with Adam Wharton. Of course, Steve Parish came out a couple of days ago, said something that got misrepresented, to be fair, about the fact that Adam Wharton will want to play Champions League football at some point. That doesn't mean that he wants to leave at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good young player. I believe Wilcox would know him from Blackburn, excuse me. So there would be some familiarity with the player. Oliver Glasner, of course, has done a fantastic job of Palace, playing the same formation, by the way. Went 19 unbeaten until they didn't, as everyone knew. Update the bio. What's your take on Morton?
Well, Wharton's been someone certainly on United's radar for quite a long time, probably before Wilcox and all of that. But I've been looking at this and thinking, if you were to say, you know what, we want a new Casemiro in the midfield, a younger Casemiro in the midfield, I think you'd be hard pressed to look beyond Adam Wharton in that respect. And you looked at how Casemiro is still being viewed by Ruben Amorim. Wharton is still being used today as his primary deep midfielder because of a few things. He's got great passing range. Adam Wharton's one of the best passers of the ball I've ever seen from that position. Like he would be great in any era at any point in time. He's not the most athletic player, but he sits deep as this kind of like, fulcrum for the whole team in front of this back three, can get the ball out quickly. he makes so much sense for a United team, that needs somebody, younger that can come in and can help. We see how they want to attack quickly, how they want to go fast, how the midfield does need to be able to send those balls in behind and all of that. And he's just a really good player. Obviously, Premier League experience, Premier League proven at this point for multiple years now. So you'd expect to be able to come right in and play. He's a great player. I mean, there's a few midfielders I'd be really happy United signed, but Adam Wharton's certainly one that's been on their radar. I think he was one of the main alternatives. It's just they're all going to be expensive and they're all going to be difficult to get anytime before summer for sure.
The way you just described Wharton to me is the way that most people would describe Baleba. So are we talking deep line 6? So
I think they're
Baleba, but it's not both.
Yeah, I would say so. Yes, because I would definitely say so. Like, I think Baleba, one of the things about him, just to say, as far as I had heard, is that is how Baleba is. But he's also, some of the view of him is that he was so, what's the word for it? Like, he could do a lot of different things technically when you look at the skill set and such that he has. But certainly, I would say that's more of his position as well. I think it's more likely one of those players, though. I mean, at the end of the summer, when they passed, when Baleba wasn't going to happen, they were looking at Wharton and Yeoman as alternatives, and they're both quite similar.
You say Baleba
as well.
More versatile, has a bit more versatility.
Yeah.
Okay. So because I'm wondering, like, United are going to have a decision to make with Kobbie Mainoo in January.
Yeah. Yep.
How I feel about that decision will depend on what happens over the next 2 months with results.
Yes. Right? If we're good, then the club are right in whatever choice they make,
I trust Aberreen. I mean, you could see with United fans, they're dying to trust them. They're dying to get behind him. They don't need much for them to start believing in him. They want to believe in him. You saw that last weekend. But Casemiro, we know, will go at the end of the season. Yep. So there's a need to replace Casemiro.
Yep.
And United need to replace Casemiro with someone younger, with more legs, a bit more energy. Yep. That can play in that system. So if Kobbie Mainoo was to go, James, in January, and that would leave United with 2. Now, that doesn't mean that obviously there'd be Wharton and Baleba and someone else, because there would be a 6 or a key. With Kobbie Mainoo, what do you think will happen here between now and January?
I don't think he'll go in January. I mean, I really think the club aren't going to let him go. Oh, you mean between now and January?
Well, let me ask you this really quick. Sorry, let me leave the point a bit here. What I mean is, if United start playing well between now and January, that's going to mean that Kobbie Mainoo's not getting the team, because that's going to mean that United are playing the way Ruben Amorim wants them to play, and because he's not in the starting 11. I would love to see Kobbie in a team that United are playing well in, where that doesn't have to be a consideration. But it seems to me the only way Mainoo starts getting game time is if the current setup isn't working.
Yeah, it's a little strange. It's hard to say like what's going to happen here on that, because I would tend to agree with that point. Now, I think that when you look at it, this is the challenge that we go back and forth on, which is that if United are good in that setup, well, you could look at Kobbie Mainoo and say, look, if United are a good team and they're playing well and everything's great, you're 20 years old, take the sub minutes, take the rotation minutes. There's going to be more games next year. If it's working and United are on track for Europe, next year there's double the games. And it's like, then it's going to be a different situation that you're going to be in terms of rotations and in terms of all of that. It's hard to take that short versus long-term view of things in here, because if United are back in Europe, we can't lose all these players too, in terms of the long-term view.
How exciting a prospect is it to Kobbie Mainoo to say, hey, look, next season, we're going to have double the amount of games. You're going to get more game time. You're still going to have the Bruno Fernandes situation.
But maybe Bruno leaves too, what I mean? Like that's part of it. It's hard. It's an unknown, because I think the ideal plan would be replaces Bruno, right? Like that makes sense to me. Bruno's getting older. He's not going to do this forever. He can. He may look to leave in the summer, not to Saudi, but to somewhere in Europe, because United are probably still a few years away from competing. I don't think Bruno will be Bruno by the time United are competing. You know what I mean? So if he wants to go somewhere and compete at the highest level, his window is really small. It's really small. It's shortening by the day. And you know, he really, I think, gave strong consideration to going to Saudi over summer and didn't. But you know, they've been looking at Barcelona and Bayern and Italian clubs for some time as well in his side, in his camp. And it's hard. I don't know. It's such an unknown, this situation with Kobe, because that is the situation. If Bruno's here and he's going to stay for 2 more years and be the main guy, then Kobe's going to leave. It's almost a sure thing, right? That
And to
he's
be
going to
fair to
look to leave.
Manu, he's just asking to go on loan. He's not asking to
Yeah,
leave on a
yeah,
permanent deal. So he must obviously see his long-term future at United. I can understand the kid wants to play to make sure he
yeah,
plays the World Cup this summer. I don't think that's a terrible thing. I don't think you should be criticized for wanting to play football. And I think you have to respect that he might not
yeah,
completely agree with Amorim why he's out of the team. But um, you know, for him, he has a lot at stake. You can only get away with that, James. If Kobe Manu goes out on loan and plays really well, you can only get away with that if you're winning games of football,
yep,
right? If
yep,
United are losing, Kobe Manu goes out, he's playing really well. All those players that didn't work at United will come back to haunt Amorim. So we can only do that to me off the back of
yeah.
the momentum
Success,
and
yeah.
confidence of winning games of football. Otherwise, it's an unthinkable outcome to like having Manu go in January. Do you think United will bring players in January?
I think they certainly will look to. I mean, it's hard. There's 2 ways to the strategy that I see. One, they have the financial ability to do it. Um, there's definitely the need to do it. And it could easily, and they're going to be well aware of the fact that, like, hey, look, if we're within striking distance of Europe or in European places, bringing somebody in to help us is worth the money. It's worth the
Mm-hmm.
investment. I know they're thinking that way. It's not like how it was of old, of like, we only work in summer windows or something like that. They will do it if a player's available. I think that's the main challenge, is that they're not going to want to rush into buying somebody where, you know, if they can't get one of their main guys, that's the challenge, I think.
I also think United will benefit from that scenario too, and that there'll be other players wanting to leave clubs in
Yes.
the World Cup that will be available that otherwise wouldn't be. So I think that's also something United can take advantage of.
Yeah.
Liverpool up its weekend. Um, this is to me such a pivotal game. We've said this many, many times, but if Amorim was to go there and win, James, the negativity that was, you know, as dark as it could be a month ago, 3 weeks ago, would completely evaporate.
Yeah. No, it is. It's one of the biggest opportunities we have to take what maybe looks like signs of a little bit of progress and put that marker down and say, we're going somewhere. You know,
Lamin goes there and gets a clean sheet, James. United would win that game, or like that would be the confidence derivative you get from that would be just something you can't buy. It would
huge,
just it would
huge.
completely lift so much of the darkness and the negativity. It put enormous pressure on a slot. It would do wonders for young Lamans,
Yep.
right? And it is the one game United fans want to win more than any other away, and
Yeah.
nothing feels better than that.
Yeah. It would practically be like a season, like, pin, like, all right, we beat Liverpool at Anfield, and you just go on from there, and it would end a lot of back and forth and questions winning a game like that.
As far as we know, no injuries over international break. No,
Nothing that we have. Some for other teams, but we've seemed to have escaped it. That's something that has been markedly improved, I think, is the United players not picking up injuries left and
yes, I
right.
have to say that is true. So United going into that game, Alessandro Martinez still not back at a point where he can be considered. For what were we looking at here towards the end of the year, December, for that to be a consideration? Because it seems to me like there was a consideration. He was training with the team over the summer, and was there a setback? Because it seems to me like his comeback has been pushed back. Is that
Well, I think
expected
in the
earlier?
summer it was a bit, yeah, I think in the summer he's with the group, but a bit of a different type of training. I mean, when I spoke to some people in summer, they always expected maybe end of October, early November, because when you're talking about these knee injuries, like,
Yes.
you just, there's always going to be little, and you're not going to get a report every time a guy rehabbing from an ACL has a little muscle pull. It's going to happen many times over the course of the rehab, that you're going to tweak something because your body's
Yeah.
so adjusting so many different ways. I think maybe before the international break he could be in the team, but
Want to give a special shout out to my good friend Demo, who's a wrestler, who gave me an amazing breakdown, by the way, on ACL
oh,
recovery, and
nice.
he was exactly the same as yourself, saying did not expect him until around October, November, around November, December
Yeah.
time. So, but I was just under the impression that because of what I'd seen over the summer, that he was going to be back sooner after the
Yeah,
first.
I think a lot of
But
people hope so, but no, unfortunately.
all right, you need to have anything else before we go?
I think that'll do it. I will do it.
Okay, so we'll see you back next Monday. Hopefully, we're celebrating, and we've got an amazingly positive Kumbaya Namaste podcast. As usually, I'll keep you measured. You've got temper tantrum problems. Anger management issues. Ginger, I'm a good cop, bad cop here.
That's me.
All right, man. I will see you next week. Thanks to all of
Yeah.
you for downloading the podcast, for all your support. Much appreciated. And hope you're all safe. And I'll see you next week. Take it easy. Cheers,
See you
Jimsy.
later.
See you, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.